Award-winning broadcast journalist Ed Marshall asks the tough questions you want answered. Informative, soul-stirring, one-on-one interviews about matters that affect our lives in this region we call home. Here now with conversations is Ed Marshall.
Well, hello and welcome back to the show. Just a few days ago, Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards updated state residents and the news about what's going on with COVID-19 and all the things that are happening with the virus. And hospitals are filling up again, and he's very concerned that the clock is turning back and because of some of the information that's out there. Take a listen.
The misinformation out there about COVID vaccines is literally costing lives. And it's costing lives here in Louisiana as well. It's preventing people from getting the protection that they need for themselves, their families, their community. And when it comes to misinformation, not sharing it is caring for your neighbor. So I'm calling on people not to spread misinformation. In short, bad information about the COVID-19 vaccine is slowing our efforts to end the pandemic. Here in Louisiana, over the last 14 days, the number of COVID-19 cases has increased 167%. Hospitalizations throughout Louisiana have been increasing for the past 14 days, with 245 additional hospitalized patients added during that time. Over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have lost more than 4 months of progress in our hospitalization numbers. If you go back to March 4th, you will see numbers that are right around today's number. And on March 4th, we had 554. Statewide percent positivity of new COVID-19 tests conducted currently is 6.3%. It's almost 3 times what it was just a few weeks ago. During the past week, there have been 35 new outbreaks and 200 new outbreak-related cases. And Joe will go over more of this in just a moment, but this represents a 169% increase in the number of reported outbreaks and a 96% increase in the number of outbreak-associated cases relative to just the previous week.
The governor's concerns are also shared by one of the doctors who's been on the front lines of the pandemic since the beginning. Please welcome Dr. Corey Hebert to the show. Dr. Hebert, pleasure to have you on the air. I know we'd have you by phone. You were due to be here, but you've been at the hospital all night working with some young people, teens, as well as a 25-year-old. Can you give us an update on what's going on with teens and what's happening?
Yes, Ed, I'm very, very concerned right now. And the reason why is because this whole Delta variant is a little bit more aggressive than we thought it may be. And it's affecting more children and teenagers because these folks at this age, they feel like they're invincible. They don't really wear their masks. They are out partying and actually just doing summer activities. I don't even want to make it seem negative because they're not doing anything that's just abnormal. Sure. They're just, being teens and young adults. And so what's happening is that we're seeing the numbers go up. And even in Mississippi, we had about 10 ICU patients with COVID in the last couple of weeks. So this is something that we're going to see that trend go up because we don't have vaccinated folks across our state. I mean, our state is lagging behind in the country, and with minorities even more so. So what we expect is that the minority population, teens, not just teens, but the whole minority population and poor populations are going to see a significant rise. And we don't think it's going to be as bad as it was as far as numbers, but we will see a significant rise as we've seen in the last couple of days.
And what's really worrisome is that school is about to begin, and whether kids are going to wear mask or no mask. That's a big concern.
Right, and I will tell you, so let's just look at what has happened in the last, 15, 20 days, right? So 25 days ago, we had 10,000 cases a day in the United States, right? Yesterday, we had 34,000 cases per day.
Wow.
Okay, that's just basically 3 weeks, right, how that has changed. And the CDC has now come up to say that they want all kids to have to wear masks in schools now. And I'm going to tell you, you can go back and look at everything I've said. I have said that we should not stop wearing masks because we, the CDC came out with this edict to say if you were vaccinated that you didn't have to wear a mask. But we were saying we were relying on the honor system, and that's just inappropriate. And also the CDC also said at the end, they said you have to look at your municipalities, look at your different areas of the country, because you're going to have to make some decisions based on that. And that makes perfect sense, because if you're in Montana, that's a lot different than what you'd have to deal with in Manhattan.
Yes.
And so because of those two things, we have to make these decisions. And so in our city, I want on WDSU, I'm the chief medical editor for that network, as well as the Black News Channel, which is a national network. I've told people, there's no reason for you to stop wearing masks at any point, because you don't know if people are actually vaccinated or not. I mean, I had to stop a guy from selling fake vaccination cards in front of one of the hospitals here in the city.
Oh, wow.
So this is you can't risk your life and your family's life on the honor of other people. I hate to be that way, but this is a life or death situation here.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot about RSV. Can you explain to our audience what that is and how it affects particularly children?
Yes, right. So the CDC came out about a month ago, and we saw a huge increase in RSV, which is called respiratory syncytial virus. It's a virus that is always around. It causes a lot of problems in premature babies. It causes a lot of problems in newborns that are not premature. It can cause your child to wheeze, sound like they have asthma. They'd have to be intubated and could kill them. And we have seen a huge increase in New Orleans in RSV, as well as parainfluenza virus, which is similar to influenza, but obviously not as severe. But that it causes a little disease that people have heard of a long time ago called croup. Mm-hmm. So these things are causing a lot of illness across the country, let alone the COVID-19. So if you have a child, especially a young baby, and they are wheezing, then what we need you to do is to make sure that you get them to the hospital if you feel like they are really decompensating, because they could have RSV, and that can be much more devastating to a young child than COVID-19.
And there's really no cure for that. That's kind of you have to kind of just go through it.
Yeah, go through it. Yeah, all the viruses, coronavirus, RSV, parainfluenza, there are no cures for any viruses. You just have to kind of, basically when you get a viral infection, it's your body against the virus. If you win and your immune system is strong enough, then the virus just goes away and goes dormant. If the virus wins, you die, and that's it. And I hate to be that way, but this is how serious this is now.
Yeah, just be blunt with it. Tell us more about the Delta variant and what it's doing. They tell me that it's even much worse than the original COVID virus.
Yes. So basically, what happens is, just like with influenza, every year it changes a little bit. So there was H3N2, which is the general, I can't even talk this morning. It's so crazy. The general influenza virus that's kind of out there, right? But we have H1N1, H3N2. We have all these different variants of influenza, which cause us to have to make the vaccines a little bit different every year. Make sense? So what happens is, as COVID-19 starts to, SARS-CoV-2, the Alpha variant, which was the original, it starts to move through our communities. And then viruses are very smart. They're living things. So when people start having antibodies to it, then the viruses change. They mutate. And so now we are up to actually Lambda, but the Greek alphabet is Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. So that's the fourth variant. And this variant we were calling it the Indian variant at first, which is not good because that's politically incorrect, because it's not an Indian variant, but it's a variant that really did a lot of damage in India. So we started using the nomenclature of the Greek alphabet, so not as to give anybody any, feelings of people are picking on them and picking on their race, right?
Sure.
So the Delta variant is the same one as the variant that was in India. It's actually a 12 mutation variant. People call it a double mutation, but it's actually a 12 mutation, and it had the South African variant and the Brazilian variant in it, right? So it did a lot of damage in Europe, and now it's the predominant strain pretty close in the United States, and it's going to be that way. And we're just one strain, one flip away from it being another horrible strain. And let me explain this to people that don't want to get vaccinated. When I pull people aside and I ask them why, they never can give me a good health reason. Right. They just really can't. They give me some semantics about, they give me, this vaccine was free for some people and not free for some people. Or black people say that, the Tuskegee experiment and they're going to hurt black people and blah, blah, blah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not, dismissing any of that, because the medical establishment has done some horrible, atrocious things to African Americans over the history of time. But I will say that the things that have been done to black people all those hundreds of years, and actually very recently, are much worse than somebody getting a vaccine. And when black people feel like they don't want to get a vaccine because they think it's something that the government's trying to hurt them with, just always remember that more white people have gotten this vaccine than black people. And it's not just in black areas, and it's not just for black people, it's for everybody. So I've always told, people, if a group of people are getting something and it's for all people, and especially the rich people, I hate to be that way, but got to be blunt here. When you're in New York and you got every millionaire and billionaire in New York getting this vaccine, poor black people need to say, I probably need to step in line to get it, because that's just not how government works. We're just trying to be a conspiracy theory, in case you know.
Yeah. This show is about telling it like it is. That's why we call it conversation. We just want people to deal direct. They don't have to fact check this, because we get people on who are telling the story just the way it is. Dr. Hebert, thank you for all you do and for being with us this morning. And please come back and talk with us again in the days ahead. Hopefully more people will heed what you've had to say. So we appreciate you, and God bless.
You too, my friend. Thank you.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have more about this, what's going on with the pandemic. It's stuff that you definitely need to hear. Make your own decision, but definitely listen to what's being said right here on Conversations. Stay here.
Everybody in my house knows how to ride a bike except me. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Well, welcome back. To truly convey how serious the pandemic is, not only did we have Dr. Corey Hebert earlier with us, but we also want you to meet Dr. Vance Laborde with the Osher Hospital System. Doctor, thanks for being with us. We have heard so much about you, and of course we met you at Delgado and the things that you all are helping with that school. I'm on the board there. We really appreciate what you're doing. But let's get into some of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Why is it so important for community members to get their COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I think the critical thing that everybody needs to understand is that the COVID-19 pandemic is not over. And people need to be very clear about the fact that with the new Delta variant, which is the form of the virus that's actually dominant currently right now in the States and in Louisiana, it's significantly more transmissible than the original strain. And so at this point in time, it presents itself as a significant threat to your health, your life, and your well-being. And so with that being said, I think one fact that I think people need to understand at this point in time is that COVID-19, as it stands right now, more so than it was originally, is a preventable disease. And what I mean by that is, at this point, 99.5% 95% of the deaths that are currently that are taking place right now as a result of COVID are affecting people who are unvaccinated.
And I wanted to have you on specifically because I mean you're one of the top African Americans over at OSHA. So, and I wanted people to know that the narrative that you're giving us is correct. So how is OSHA working to make access to the vaccine more equitable, removing barriers, if you will?
That's an excellent point and question, because I think Oxford as a health system, that's been really our focus and intent from the very beginning of the pandemic. We have a vaccine task force that actually looks at that specifically, and I actually chair the equitable vaccine distribution work group at Oxford. And so what we basically do, we actually make sure that we ensure that we put processes in place that ensure that we remove barriers that would prevent certain members of our community from getting access to the vaccine. Okay. And so what this work group does, for example, one of the things that we do specifically is we look at indices that's called the ADI. People may not be aware of it, but it's actually, it means area deprivation index. And so what we actually realize is that areas that have high ADIs are typically areas where the socioeconomic status of those areas are low, educational level are low, intergenerational households tend to be high, and then those are the areas where we've noticed that there are higher incidents of COVID and negative outcomes. And so we focus on those areas to bring the vaccine access and available to them in those areas, and ensure that we provide them with educational and promotional opportunities to educate and empower them with knowledge and do away with some of this distrust and misinformation that a lot of our communities have to deal with.
Because I know you all had events, you've had the lineups, you have had the all-night events.
Correct.
So you know there really is no reason why people who want to get the vaccine cannot get it. And speaking of being creative, OSHA is bringing the vaccine to the communities, as we said, through the OSHA. You all even have a mobile vaccine unit. Could you tell us about that and that initiative?
Absolutely, yes. So again, with this idea of removing barriers and bringing the vaccine to the communities where it's actually needed, back on June 7th, we actually put together what we call a mobile vaccine clinic, which actually goes to certain areas and communities where we feel that vaccine penetration is not what it should be. So for example, this past weekend, we actually took the mobile vaccine van to the east at the Norman Brown Playground. Oh yeah. Where there was a Afro-Honduran celebration called Garofina. And so we provided vaccinations at that event. And so by doing events of that nature, we're able to reach some populations and groups of people who traditionally may not have had access, to the vaccine. So, were they
receptive to it?
Actually, yes. But part of it is communicating directly with them, and so the people who we were able to actually to get vaccinated, we're administering the J&J vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, at that event, was having a one-on-one conversation with them, because they were Afro-Honduran. As you know, I'm originally from Haiti, and so I was able to communicate with them and really instruct them how critically important why it is to get vaccinated.
Because they know that you know where they're coming from, and it's not like it's some foreign person. They know that because of your heritage and your ethnicity, that you're telling it to them straight.
And that's really one of the things that we've made a focus for us over there at Ochsner, making sure that we make sure that there's an equitable distribution of the vaccine. And so we've done a number of innovative things in addition to the mobile van, the mobile vaccine that we've actually put in place. We've made it a point to partner with the Hispanic community. We made it a point to partner with the Vietnamese and the Asian American community as well, by having events at their in areas where they're comfortable with. Sure. Last weekend we had a really successful event at El Bueno Church, is a Hispanic church in Metairie, where we administered the vaccines during the Mass.
Wow.
And so we had a significant amount of people participate, and oftentimes there's a language barrier. So we make sure that we have people who are bilingual, make sure that the information is available to them in their language of comfort.
That's great.
And so addressing all those barriers have really made a significant impact. And I would add, not only have we done these specific community-based types of activities where we actually provide them with education, we've also in the past done the mass events. So statewide, people may not realize this, Ochsner Health has actually provided, I think, we've administered over 472,000 doses of vaccines.
And real quickly, because we got to wrap up, with school just around the corner, what would you say to parents with kids 12 plus who are eligible to get the COVID vaccine at this time? What would you say to parents, period. About kids going to school? Should they wear a mask or what?
My recommendation to parents as school is about to open next month is to make sure that if your child, if he's 12, any child who's 12 and above, that they actually get vaccinated and get vaccinated as quickly as possible so that when they enter school, they're protected.
Okay.
Because we want to make sure that we provide our children the protection that they need so they can resume the normalcy of their lives and protect them from this very preventable, potentially deadly infection with COVID-19.
Good information. Dr. Laborde, thank you for being with us. And if you wish to take advantage of numerous ways that Ochsner and other clinics around, hospitals around, there's certainly lots of information out there.
Yes.
By just even calling the Ochsner line, and they can get in touch with it, as well as LSU and different other places. So we thank you so much for being here, and do come back, and hopefully we can put a pin in this thing and folks can get back to normal.
Absolutely. The only thing I'd like to say in final is that the only way that we're going to achieve a healthy, vibrant state is if we have a fully vaccinated and equitably vaccinated state. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All righty. When we come back, we're going to talk with someone who lost a family member before the vaccines were available. And her message hopefully will hit home with you, and you can make your decision after you hear from her. She's a wonderful person who's been on the show before. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
The lady to my right needs no introduction because she's been with us many times. She's the vice chancellor over at Delgado Workforce Development, and but she's here in a different place today because we're talking about COVID-19. This dear lady, Miss Orlando Williams, thank you so much for being with us. And you lost your dad, of course, to COVID-19, but it was prior to a vaccine being out. And I've heard you say many times, you know, he was such a trailblazer in Houma, and all of the accolades and things that you've done in the world, that you give them all back if you could have your dad back. Tell us, and I know that's hard for you, what it was like.
It was difficult. I remember May 7th getting a phone call from my stepmother saying that my father had fallen down. You know, my father was a kidney patient, as I shared with you before. So I thought it was because he had dialysis the day before. Maybe he was just weak. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. And I get there. I had no mask on. I had no gloves on. I was rushing into the house to get him off the floor. But it was something different this time. I picked him up from the back. He let out a cough that went to the front. So we got him in the bed, and I kept saying, something isn't right. I said, they took too much fluids off of you, because he was incoherent. So I wasn't thinking COVID. I was thinking kidney failure. So I begged him, let's go. Let's call him. Oh, no. He said, nothing's wrong. Yeah. Long story short, my uncle came over, got him to go, and 2 hours later, they called us, because at that time, no one could go to the hospital. Right. No one could do anything. You had to just wait for them to call you. They said he tested positive for COVID, and we have to admit him.
Yeah.
I knew then that his chances were going to be bleak because of the fact that someone with as many ailments that he had couldn't beat COVID. And so then they kept telling us, well, if they make it to day 10, they're going to beat it. And he made it to day 10. And then I got a call saying that they needed to do a CAT scan because they didn't understand his oxygen levels were continuing to drop. So it was a roller coaster. It went from him on the phone telling me, I got this, I'm going to beat this. To me saying, if anybody could beat it, James, you done beat that so many times, you're going to beat it. To the doctor calling and saying, we found out that it's a blood clot. And at that time, they were still finding things out, right? And so that was the same week that it came out that blood clots were a form of the COVID thing. It didn't burst, though. It splattered.
So what do you say to people that now who the vaccine's here and just your message to people?
So my message to people is that if you have an opportunity to get vaccinated, because having to rely on someone calling you with information was not a good feeling. And the thing that I deal with every single day is that my daddy gave over 40 years of his life to the service of others and their children. And he had to die by himself. Because it was so unknown, no vaccination. They did not allow us. And so I can remember the phone call with the doctor saying, I love you, but I can't do this to you. You would have to come in and I could dress you down and you would have to watch him through a glass take his last breath. And my questions were, who could do that? You know, but I said, can he hear? He said, yes. He said, I'll put the phone. And so my sisters, my stepmother, my aunt and uncle, and my children and niece and nephews, we had to say our goodbyes on the phone. We don't know. And so I tell that to anybody. Don't be in a position of not knowing if your loved one heard you say, I love you, or had heard you say goodbye. If you can get vaccinated, there's no guarantee you can't catch it, but at least you can live.
Thank you. We're out of time, but I love you. And your dad was a trailblazer in Terrebonne Parish, and he will never be forgotten. And you're carrying on his legacy. With that note, we're getting teared up here. So please take heed. And until next month, we'll see you. Bye-bye.